Welcome back, everybody. Whether you're in the room or online, we're delighted to see you and we hope that you really enjoyed your lunch. So we've got a very exciting session now. It's one that we're extremely proud and delighted to be doing today, and that is launching our new course, Discover Wellbeing. We created the course in response to the findings of the 2019 Sight Loss Survey, which revealed that 92% of the community had experienced emotional and psychological impacts as a result of their condition. Through Discover Wellbeing, we aim to help those living with inherited sight loss and those able and who support them to develop an awareness of the emotional well-being and practical skills to actively adapt to life's ups and downs. To tell us more, I'm delighted to welcome three speakers who have played a key role in developing this innovative resource. So Dr. Mhairi Thurston, John Manning and Denise Rawden are going to take you through our brand new resource. Enjoy the afternoon. Thank you very much.
So, yes, I'm delighted to be here. From home, so anything could happen. I have a very vocal guide dog downstairs who may start barking any minute. I have adult children who have been given strict instructions not to stream anything, and so we hope that the Wi-Fi holds out. But I am really, really delighted to be with you today, and I'm sorry it's not in person. So we're going to look today, and what I want to talk about is about sight loss and mental health. And some of you may have heard me talk before about this, and it's an issue really that has gained more traction and more recognition. But for those of you who haven't heard me speak before, let me just start by, if I can, just by telling you a bit about myself. So I come from a family of artists and musicians and teachers, and when I was 18 I went to art college and I studied drawing and painting and fine art, printmaking at Edinburgh Art College and University, and then I went on to do teacher training, and I taught as a primary teacher for many years, like living out my childhood dream and my kind of family expectation. And during that time I became married. I had two children very close together. I carried on being a working mum, and that life was really busy because the children were maybe 3 and 2, well, they were very close together. And so with 2 toddlers and a full-time job and a partner who worked full-time, we were juggling life as it was. And I became pregnant unexpectedly with my 3rd child. And at that time, I started to realize that I wasn't reading teletext, because this is back in the day before there was all smart apps and things. I wasn't able to read that as well as I had been. And I went to the optician to find out what glasses I might need. And at that appointment, there was triggered a referral to the hospital, and that referral to the hospital triggered a series of appointments. And just before my baby was due, I was told that I had retinitis pigmentosa and that there was no cure for it and that it would lead to blindness. And that's what I heard. I don't think they actually said these words, but what I heard was, you're going blind and there's no cure. And I had no family history of this, so there was nobody in the family to figure out how it would progress. And I mean, it was just such a shocking time. My 3rd child was born into this chaos, and life became increasingly difficult because very soon I was told that you don't have enough sight to drive. And that trying to kind of go back after maternity leave and lead a kind of life as normal was really hugely difficult. And it wasn't normal. It was, in fact, I was spiraling into a really deep despair and depression. I tried to carry on with my teaching job, but I felt I can't do this. I can't. How can I teach if I have no sight? You know. So I stopped teaching. I took an early retirement from teaching, and we had to, because we had one income, we had to then move to a smaller house. And so within a very short period of time, I wasn't in my kind of support systems at work because I had good friends at work. I didn't have like the support systems of home, a familiar home. I was in a new area, in a new house, and I felt really unable to cope. And at this point, like, nobody was asking about how I was feeling. Or I think maybe somebody did say, do you want a visit from social work? And of course I thought, well, if social work comes, they'll take away my children. So I didn't want any intervention from social work. And then I was offered a training, long cane training. And during that, I realized how my life had changed from being kind of an able-bodied member of society. I was that person using a cane to get around. And then all my internal prejudices were triggered, because if you think about our society, you know, the representations of blind people usually are around like the blind beggar, or the kind of the witch in the fairy tale, or something, or somebody, you know, there's no kind of wonderful, I really want to be that blind person, or there wasn't at the time. I wasn't aware of it at the time. I didn't even think about blindness. So that was a really tricky time, and my depression lingered and spiraled, and there was maybe 2 or 3 missing years, which really is hard to recount, because these were the formative years of my kids, and I was kind of missing in action. I was there in body, but I really was in a black hole. So things changed when I got my first guide dog, and it wasn't as straightforward. The sun came out, because at the point I went into training with the guide dog, I realized, this is it. I'm a blind person. You know, there's no escaping this. I can't hide my stick. I'm out with my guide dog. I'm actually out and about. And that was really the lowest point of all, I think. But there was something about my guide dog was really pretty special, and she became the guide dog of the year. She was called Wanda, and she did an amazing job, because my kids were still really small, and they were still under 5. You know, maybe the oldest one was 7, 6, and 4 or something at the time we got her. And so she used to come to nursery, you know, help me walk the kids to nursery into primary school, and she would do the ballet classes with us, and disco dancing, and come swimming, and like with the family, and we would go. She just like was quite extraordinary. We'd do Brownlow talks, and the general public, the British public, tend to love guide dogs. I don't know if any of you are a guide dog owner, or you might have your guide dogs with you today, but you'll understand where there's a kind of real fascination for this. So I took this as like there was a lot of publicity around it, and soon I began to feel more integrated into society. I felt like there was something I'd done, you know, I kind of overcome something, and there was a lot of publicity. I think we went on Blue Peter, and we were on the side of a London bus, and you know, like, so that kind of helped my confidence. And when I had that confidence, I went to do a night class in counselling skills, because I thought, if I can't see, perhaps I'll be able to listen to people. And so I did the counselling skills. I really loved it, and I stayed on and did a diploma, and then went on to a master's. And what really fascinated me, and this started it all off, and this was way back in 2008, I think, was like I was really aware of how sight loss had impacted on my mental health. But mental health is still a kind of taboo topic back in 2008. You know, it was kind of called emotional rather than mental health. We're much more upfront now about talking about it, although there's still a kind of lingering stigma. But the young people nowadays quite openly talk about mental health. So I was keen to know, did anybody else experience this, or was it just me? Was I weak in some way? Was I a bit of a wuss? So I did my first research and interviewed 18 participants who all, I think the majority of them actually had RP, with a link through the links with my local societies. I think there was some that didn't. Anyway, what I found out from that was that sight loss really impacted in key areas, and one was in terms of making sense of the diagnosis, how difficult that was for people, and also the coping with degenerating sight. So there was something about, each eye felt really important, like I can see out my good eye, but my good eye's losing a bit of sight now. So having to adapt all the time to less decreasing vision, and to kind of adapt your lifestyle. So that was really tricky. Also the feelings of loss that people had, experiencing sight loss, in terms of loss of skills and abilities. So mine was an art background, and I felt like it was really cruel that my sight would be impacted, because that was one thing that I loved to do. I was really visual about the world, and just still with my residual sight, I appreciate what I can see. But that I felt acutely, that loss, and also loss of hopes and dreams, of kind of aspirations of like, what will my kids be like on their wedding day? These were kind of shared dreams that people reported as losing. I can't see my grandchildren anymore, or what if I can't do the job as an engineer? I was going to travel abroad, but I can't do that now. So it kind of felt like it robbed a future. So feelings of loss were a big deal. And also in terms of public reactions to sight loss, so experiencing others, there were some really challenges that people reported in interacting with the public. Either you're treated as a kind of pariah, because people are awkward around sight loss, and they don't know, maybe speak to your partner, not you, or speak to your friends and not you, or I mean, I used to find people would talk really slowly to me, like if I got on a bus and would go, "Where do you want to go?" And then I would play along, really, because I didn't want to be rude. But there's a lot of awkwardness around sight loss from the public. And also there's a changing relationship with family and friends, how, particularly if you're being somebody who's really keen on giving, and you're no longer in that kind of giving position, you feel like you're a taker, like there's a strive for independence, but really what you have to learn when you have sight loss is how to be dependent, and that's really tough. It can change relationships. Or if you're like the man of the house, then you feel like you're a hunter-gatherer, and maybe that has been taken away from you because you feel emasculated in some way, that you can't do that role. So a changing perception of self and the relationship with friends and family. So in all of these ways, sight loss impacted on people. And that led me to identify 5 stages of sight loss. And this is really important. Like the Discover Wellbeing course is based around these 5 stages of sight loss. And so the first is diagnosis, where there's a shock and panic, disbelief, fear of future, a really difficult stage, and like around my own diagnosis, I can really relate to that. And then there's a stage where it's a keep calm and carry on. And this is a stage where people try and hold on to normalities as long as they can, maybe by not telling people about the diagnosis, maybe by not using the low vision aids that they've been given, or like, hiding the stick, in a handbag, or only bringing it out of your rucksack when you're trying to ask somebody about the bus number. So just really trying to keep life going as long as normal as possible. And then there's a third stage, which is the point of impact, where the sight loss impacts on your life so much that you cannot lead your life as normal. So perhaps it's when you lose your driving license. Perhaps it's where you can't find your way to the shop anymore without using your cane, or perhaps it's about not being able to do the knitting that you once loved, or It could be any point of impact that that happens, and that often triggers a real engagement with the low vision aids, because you realise that you can't carry on hiding or going without. You need to be able to have a stick or a guide dog or the low vision aids around the house to really you maximize what you can do, your functionality. And then there's a kind of fifth stage, which is like a new normal, where life becomes, you kind of reconnect with yourself and assimilate what's happened to you, and you kind of find a new way of being in the world. But this is not linear, right? So it can, I've made it sound like it's all pretty neat. You do this and this and this and this, but it's not. It's cyclical. So for example, the point of impact can happen right at diagnosis. If you're told when you're in your diagnosis you can't drive, then you're going to have wham, boom. It's like not only the shock of the diagnosis, but a huge point of impact. And that's really, really tough to deal with. Or it might be delayed in that you maybe have an intimate partner that you're, really looks after you and is you have a wonderful relationship with. And it's only maybe when something happens to them that you suddenly realize there's a point of impact for you that you can't carry on as you did before. So it can happen anytime. And even for somebody like me who's very much into a new normal, like last week was my daughter's graduation in Cambridge, and that took me to a point of impact where sight loss became a real issue for me again. And I really struggled mentally to recover from that, because I'm so used to being like, I can get around here, and it's almost like I'm not disabled. But being in that really strange, busy situation made me realize, oh, bugger, pardon my French, I am really disabled. I can't do this, So the point of impact can hit you at any time. And, there's a reaction to that to be understood. So, of course, sight loss impacts on mental health. Of course it does, but we're not good at kind of admitting that and talking about it. And I think like Macmillan cancer, they have this sewn up, because if you had a diagnosis of cancer, you would be like, what support do you want to talk to somebody? But we're not really good at acknowledging that. So one of the pieces of work that we had to do around emotional support was with RNIB, in terms of defining what support is there. And there are kind of tiers of support. So tier 0, which is a kind of new addition to the tiers, is the kind of like, things that are kind of helpful in your life, your cultural resources. What do you like to do? Like your faith maybe, or your choir, or maybe, self-help materials. Maybe there's online stuff that is helpful to you. So all of that kind of things that you find joy in is, be tier 0 stuff. Tier 1 would be the things like the eye clinic liaison officers. These are like listening services where, you just want somebody to talk through things with. These are really helpful as well. Tier 2 would be for like counselling, specialist counselling. And I'm saying specialist here because one of the other strands of the work that I've been doing is training counsellors to work with people with sight loss, because there are particular issues that you have of somebody with sight loss that counsellors need to know about to be able to go there, because sometimes they won't go there if they don't feel confident in understanding what's really going on. And then there's a third sort of tier where it's more like acute mental health support. So we've, which is maybe triggered by GPs and things. So there's different people need different support at different points of the journey. And one of the things that is one of the trends now in the VI sector, the VI sector charity partnership, is to be a move towards asking those who work with people with sight loss to be checking in about their mental health and to be asking them about it. And what I'm delighted about is to be involved with is the Discover Wellbeing course. So I think Retina UK have really been ahead of the game here, because what they've done is as we're beginning now to talk about mental health, they've produced a resource which is kind of sits between tier 0 and tier 1, kind of really something that you can do by yourself, or you can have it supported as well, but Denise will tell you more about that. But it's a wonderful resource for supporting your mental health. So my parting is, I'm aware of time, I'm going to stop now, but I think I want to say to you, right, yes, acknowledge, pay attention to how you're feeling. And it's not weakness. It's not, you have to really foster your well-being. And as I say, this course, the Discover Wellbeing, is a wonderful, rich resource to draw on. So thank you so much for listening, and I will pass you over to the wonderful John Manning.
Hello, thank you, Mhairi. I wanted to start by asking everybody a bit of a question. So welcome everybody, thanks for coming, because I know trains and stuff have been a bit of a nightmare today. So anyone online as well, welcome. And anyone who maybe attempted to come in face to face but ended up online because of the disruptions, thank you. One thing I wanted to start by asking was, has anyone ever dropped anything in their house or when they're out and about and it's almost completely ruined their day? Anyone ever done that? Maybe you go tell your friends, work colleagues, this horrible thing happened. Has anyone ever done the same, but they've kind of picked it up and got on with their day and it's not really had too much of an impact? Everyone had both of those types of experiences? So, my name's John. I am the founder of an organisation called Arthur Ellis. They're named after my granddad's. Grandad Arthur died just before I was born. Ellis had something called Schizoaffective Disorder, apart from an incredibly frightening word. Does anyone know what that means? Where it comes from or derives from? Schizophrenia, yeah. So it's like a combination of bipolar and schizophrenia. So early 70s, West Yorkshire. His behaviour wasn't really understood and people around him didn't know what to do to support him. So unfortunately, Ellis spent the next sort of 35, 36 years in an institute. So I found out about this when I was discovering a little bit more about my own mental health. This was about 6 years ago or so. And I'd been in, I don't know if anyone has tried to access mental health services before, but mental health awareness started in 2007 or so, really, it started then. Been a huge influx of people talking about mental health, which is amazing. But, there's a but with this. There's about 500,000 GP appointments every single day now for mental health related issues. That's across the country. So in your work, if you could imagine, you have 500,000 more clients every day. There begins to be a little bit of a funnel that gets created, and then we're seeing some waiting lists across the industry. And some of these waiting lists are, I was in a waiting list myself for about 4 years, and I'm sure that you guys are very familiar with going to the doctors and trying to get an appointment. You don't really get an appointment with anticipating that you're going to need some help in 6 months' time. You need the help there and then. So I wanted to try and tackle that issue. So I set up Arthur Ellis, and there's a series of businesses that feed profit into a one-to-one service for children. That's how Arthur Ellis is structured. And we're now seeing about 60 children a day. We've got 40 practitioners of different levels of psychology, clinical psychology, special educational needs, disabilities, that sort of thing. And our aim is to see everybody that's referred to us within a week. So, I don't know how old I am now. How old am I? 31. So when I was 26 or so, 25, I was in this waiting list, and all I needed to know was what was going on with me, like what was my behaviour doing, and why am I doing this? And I was lucky enough to be able to go to the Priory. Anyone heard of the Priory? Super fancy place. Yeah, celebrities, Russell Brand and them lot. So I didn't see anybody, got no gossip, They stagger their appointments because they're used to the clientele. But from being on a waiting list for 4 years to being welcomed into a, say, clinic or offices, whatever term you want to use for it. But I was offered a coffee. The receptionist talked to me and spent time talking to me. The psychiatrist that I saw spent an extra 10 minutes explaining what was going on with me. And in that appointment, I was diagnosed with something called bipolar disorder. So I feel like I'm at Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is John, and I don't have a sight loss condition. And going through Mhairi's research in quite a lot of depth, one of the things, or one of the trends that came out of that, was that the inherited sight loss community need to have support from the inherited sight loss community. It's so important that that there's this connection with what you're going through. And I kind of had something similar, in that if somebody had a bad day and I told them that I was bipolar, then they would say, oh yeah, I totally understand, when really they haven't got a clue what it's all about. And people saying that they understand when they don't, I don't know if you guys have ever had that, but I find that one of the most frustrating things in the world. So I didn't want to do that when we were creating these courses, this resource. So what we did was got together a variety of different focus groups. We thought about the different elements of life that might be interrupted by inherited sight loss, the journey, or the stages of the journey that Mhairi alluded to: diagnosis, keep calm and carry on, point of impact, coming out, and new normal. Did it. All 5. So we established kind of 3 main areas. Early stages, which was the early onset. So there might still be a lot of vision, there might still be a lot of hearing, but that you may have found out that you've got the gene or just been diagnosed, so not really had too much sight loss just yet. There's then living with change, which is designed more for the advanced stages, so maybe there's not a lot of sight loss at all. And then supporting others, which is for friends, family, so that not only do we get the individual in a place where they're able to really support themselves, but everyone surrounding them are also on the same page. So the process of creating this was really driven by everybody within those areas. We did different focus groups, we spoke to a variety of different people. Each meeting was around a couple of hours, I think, Denise, it was a couple of hours for each meeting with these people. And it established this incredible resource. So one of the things that I wanted to talk through and add on to what Mhairi was saying was where this actually sits and what its purpose is. And by that, I wanted to go through the difference between well-being and mental health, because there's so much terminology that's used in this area: wellness, well-being, mental fitness, and there's so many different things. So I just wanted to keep it nice and simple and just go through the difference between 2. So well-being is how comfortable, happy, and healthy we are. It's not necessarily how we wake up and feel on that given day. It's quite a long-term thing. It's something to strive for. Mental health is a state of our well-being. So mental health is directly impacted by how our well-being is. And mental health determines how we deal with particular situations, whether we let dropping a glass on the floor ruin our day or not, and those sorts of things. So if our well-being's in a really good place, we can drop anything and we'll just clean it up and we'll get on with our day. Maybe not everything. There's certain things we really don't want to drop. But if our well-being isn't in a great place and we drop something, then it's going to have a knock-on effect to how we react and our behavior. So well-being is structured in 5 particular areas of behavior. Mhairi mentioned a few things like choirs that you might be involved in or walks that you might do, but they go into different categories of behavior. So the first one is move, and that's anything that we do for physical exercise that isn't attached to a really stressy goal. So training for a marathon, for example, has a different stress level to going for a lunchtime walk. So it's like the lunchtime walk kind of things, or choosing the stairs rather than escalator or anything like that. That has a massive impact on our mental health. If you've got a background in fitness or anything like that, or you've known people, the physical benefits of it is brilliant, but it releases something called serotonin in our minds, and that helps us to stabilize our moods. So that helps if you are going to drop something. Usually it's not planned, But if you are going to drop something, it's going to help you react in a much more healthy way. We've then got focus, which is anything that draws our attention to the present moment. So that could be cooking, gardening, having a bath, or listening to music. It's typically those things that we describe as being therapeutic. You've just got any behaviors in your life that you would describe as being therapeutic. And that's because when we're drawing our attention to the present moment, we're giving ourselves a break from all of that future thinking or thinking about the future. And something like, for example, anxiety, the definition of it is worry or nervousness around uncertain future events. I don't know about you, but pretty much everything in my future is uncertain. And you know, there's ways in which we can't necessarily avoid those, but we need to learn and build skills in dealing with it. So discover is the third one. That's all about learning new things, being curious. I fixed a tap in my house about 6 months ago, and I'm still telling everyone about it because I'm so proud of myself. But learning those little things, and whether it's a little bit of DIY or whether it's a new song on an instrument that you play, that's linked to boosting our confidence, our self-esteem, and having pride in ourselves. Communicate is the fourth one, and that's not necessarily just speaking to people, because you can speak to people all day, every day, and you can still feel lonely, right? So it's actually our methods of communication. So anyone ever heard, well, you've probably know some people who are more passive-aggressive, and that's more described as like sarcasm. So do people know people who can be some sarcastic sometimes? Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got aggressive, and we probably know people who are quite aggressive. Passive, which is often people like who are quite passive are described as doormats. So just say yes to everything, and they don't really consider the impact that it has on them in the long term. And then assertive is where you're quite firm with what you're saying, you know what you're saying, you stand behind it, and you can really make quite a positive impact. So it's the way that we communicate that's important, and that's really changing with the introduction of different technologies. And then finally, help, which is all about helping others. When we help somebody else, and it's quite interesting in Eastern cultures, I'm doing for time, okay. In Eastern cultures, if they've had a horrendous day, well, let's do a little bit of an experiment. If you've had a really bad day, and say it's like, well, it's Friday, isn't it? You've had a really, really long week. Well, it's Saturday today. So it's Friday yesterday, had a really, really long week, really hot, you don't really want to do anything. You did plan to go for a walk or go to the gym or something, but if that falls apart, what might you do instead? Anyone want to confess? Sorry, I heard something at the back. Pub, yeah, people simultaneously, pub. So we've got go to the pub, takeaway, for example. Could be a variety of things. My thing is I only ever get one order at KFC, and it's a family feast, and I only live by myself. So, but you do these things, right? You replace that positive behavior with something that is a little bit more negative. And that's kind of like communication. If we've got plans with social, a social event, and then throughout the focus groups, we realized a variety of things that get in the way of that purely because of the inherited sight loss condition, which could be lighting. It could be because it's winter, it's going to be naturally darker, so you don't want to go out, and it interrupts these well-being behaviors. That then has a knock-on impact to the state of your mental health and determines on how you're going to react if you drop that glass. So these things are all interconnected. But when we have one of those horrendous times, we typically do something for ourselves. So we might go to the pub, we might go have a takeaway, we might go to Lush and get a bath bomb and do something for ourselves. But in Eastern cultures, if they've had a really awful day like that and they just can't stomach doing anything else, they will get home, drop their stuff, and they'll go back out and they will look for somebody else to help. So they will look to see if someone needs help crossing the road, packing their bags, carrying their shopping, in order to make themselves feel better. And that's the power of helping others, and that's our fifth behavior. And the reason why that happens is because when you do something good, without any expectation of return, so if you're thinking I'll wash up and I'll get something back from it, then it doesn't really count. But if you're just going to do something off your own back and do something for the good of it, dopamine and oxytocin are released. So dopamine is the reward hormone. It makes you happy. It sort of tells you that you've done a good job. And then oxytocin is the love hormone, the warm, fuzzy feeling that you get when you might stroke a pet, because I'm looking at 2 dogs and I really want to stroke them, but I can't. So what that also does is actually suppresses the release of cortisol. Anyone know what cortisol does? Stress, yes, a stress hormone, absolutely. Yeah, so it's an incredible thing. So what we've built these courses around in those different areas, early stages, living with change and supporting others, is to walk you through how you can get the most value from those different areas of behavior that I've talked through. Not necessarily just getting value on them, but considering that within life, there are going to be stumbling blocks, there are going to be changes that we come up against. And how do we navigate those in the best way possible to make sure that our well-being is still intact? So within the course, we've got around 10 different activities. So there's the practical elements of all of the really positive behaviors that you can do and build into your lives. We call those bananas. It makes it a little bit more lighthearted, a difficult subject. But it also, if you think about having a banana or introducing a banana to your diet every day, are you going to get more unhealthy if you're going to do that? Unless you're allergic or anything, like, don't answer. Yeah, you're allergic. Apple, whatever it might be. So if you're introducing something like that into your diet and you consistently have it every day, you're getting all of the nutrients, the minerals, the good energy. And that's what these behaviors do for us with dopamine, oxytocin, and the different things that we've mentioned that have a positive impact on our well-being and our mind. But if those drop off through a life event or a change, could even be a positive change, like a wedding. Have you ever seen a stress-free bride? I haven't. It's because it interrupts these behaviors that keep us in a really good place. So the courses are structured around that, to have a look at what positive behaviors do you have already, which one of those out of the 5 might be a little bit more vulnerable. So are you more likely, like me, to sacrifice your pub quiz with your family for staying at home and drinking, for example? So they're the sort of vulnerable behaviors that you really need to look out for. And then those replacement behaviors, like we said about the pub, takeaways, those sorts of things, we describe those as our donuts. So our bananas add to our well-being, and our donuts, if you replace your banana with a donut, if you have a donut every single day, what's going to happen to you? Get fat, yeah, absolutely. You end up becoming more and more unhealthy. At that moment, feels incredible, right? Everyone loves a donut, but steadily over time. So if you are to replace your pub with every evening of the week and it gets to that point, then that's not a very healthy thing. So it's not necessarily to feel guilty around those indulgences and those gratification kind of behaviors, but it's to be aware of them and to recognize when they're creeping in, and for your family and friends to recognize when they're creeping in and to help you keep on a path. Sometimes just telling someone to go for a walk isn't enough, and it can kind of be a little bit patronizing. So what we've also done is some additional tools and techniques which we've redesigned, because typically psychology tools are in tables or graphs, not really something that's very helpful for this community. So we've rewritten tools within CBT, within psychology, so that if those behaviors aren't enough and you need something extra that's going to help you feel better, there are all of those tools available for you too. So I'm aware of time. I think I've probably gone over, but I'm personally very excited and very grateful to be involved in this. Reading Mhairi's research, the complete lack of support was quite apparent. It has been for quite some time. And for somebody who has gone for years and years trying to ask for help but nothing being available, I understand that, but I don't necessarily understand it in your particular circumstances. But I'm really, really pleased that we've been able to develop something that can help and will help. So I would really encourage you to give it a go. I know that Denise is going to walk you through the actual portal that it's on. And I'm going to be sticking around for a few hours as well. So if anyone's got any questions for me at all, then please feel free to ask. And thank you. Appreciate it.
Hello. I feel as though, coming up here and having a laptop in front of me, that I'm missing Devinder's, I want some music. It's like, I need some music to get us going. So if you could just bear with me as I get the laptop up and running, that's okay. I'm not very good at multitasking. What I want to do is I want to talk you through what we've actually developed to show you what Discover Wellbeing actually looks like. I had everything set up. What is it with technology? Devinder, where is he? No, absolutely fine. Thank you, Matt. Okay, so what I wanted to do was just to come up and first of all thank Mhairi and John for being able, their expertise, being able to work with them on this project has been absolutely inspiring and a real adventure and a real learning. So I really want to say a massive thank you to both of you for the support that you've given us at Retina UK in being able to pull this together. It really is important. It's something that we've recognised for a long time with our community, that of course everything that you deal with, that you cope with, the day-to-day ups, downs, struggles, the wet floor signs that cause so many bruises, all of those things, have an impact, to think that getting the diagnosis that, so many of you in the room and at home have had, for those of you who are family and friends, your loved ones have experienced, and the journey that actually takes you on, to think that that isn't going to have some sort of impact on your mental health, on your emotional well-being, would be incredibly naive. We did our survey back in 2019, and 92% of people who responded to that told us that there had been a negative impact on their emotional health directly because of their sight loss. The survey that we've just run has come back with a very similar figure, which really was no surprise. So we thought it was so important that we needed to make a difference. Our wonderful fundraising team went out and was able to secure funding for the full project, and I want to show you what we've actually developed. So first of all, how do you find Discover Wellbeing? There's actually a section on our website. It will be linked from the main page, but retinauk.org.uk Wellbeing. And this page is going to explain a little bit about the courses that we've come up with. There's a video from both John and Mhairi, thanks very much, again explaining what some of the benefits of the courses actually are to you. And there's a link, of course, to the portal, Discover Wellbeing. We did recognise that actually one size doesn't fit all. So what we wanted to do was to come up with exactly the same way as we did the focus groups, talking to people at different stages of their journey. The decision was made, actually, we needed to look at that in terms of the courses themselves. So what we did is we set up 3 courses. The first one is called Early Stages. Now, Early Stages is really for people, as it says on the tin, if you've just been diagnosed, or perhaps you haven't even had a diagnosis yet, but conditions actually run through the family, and you've noticed maybe a change in your sight, so there's concern about getting that diagnosis. Or perhaps you have had a diagnosis for some time, but sight hasn't deteriorated significantly, but you are particularly concerned and anxious about the future. Then this course aims to help you understand that feeling of apprehension and take positive, practical steps to prepare you for the future. The next course is Living with Change. And this is really for people who perhaps have been diagnosed for some time, that they are a little bit more advanced in their journey. And when we say advanced, that is absolutely down to how the person feels. It could be that actually their sight deterioration has advanced to the point where they have maybe light perception only, or it could be that they still have some very useful vision, but there's been an impact, a point of impact, as Mhairi talked about, that has changed something for them at the moment. So that life change, the way they're having to adapt, it's something that they're in right now that they're really getting anxious about. So this course is really about understanding the feelings of loss and helping people to adapt to that reduction in sight and take practical steps to continue living a positive life. I just want to share, those are the two courses really for people who are living with sight loss. And I just want to share a couple of quotes that we actually received from community members when they were completing the survey. And the first is really sort of somebody around the early stages. And they said that immediately after diagnosis, all of the uncertainty, concern in the future, my emotional well-being just completely took a dive. And for somebody that was a little bit further on, they said, I'm a really positive person, but even small incidents which remind me that I'm not as free as I used to be to do what I want, that sort of thing brings a real sense of loss and frustration. And these are the people that we're really aiming these courses for. But we didn't forget about families and friends. It's so important that you guys aren't forgotten. So we wanted to create a course that is about supporting others. That's about learning practical skills and accessing tools to look after you. But you know when you get on an aeroplane and they always say to you, you've got to put your own oxygen mask on before you put on anybody else's. But it's true, you've got to look after your own well-being first. Making sure that these tools were something that could really work for you to get you to just check in with yourself and see how you're doing, and also to teach you some really practical skills, tools, some really good understanding, things to look out for with your loved one that you can actually work through together. Help you to recognise when maybe their well-being is taking a slightly negative turn. So the courses, I would really encourage you, all of you, to actually have a look at. We had another quote in our survey that came through from someone who said mental health isn't just an issue for the person with RP, it can affect other family members too. No health professional has ever inquired about how my sight loss has impacted members of my family. It seems that they're just expected to cope. Well, we say, no, you're not. We're here to support you. At the moment, this is an online service. You do need to have access to the internet. We may actually look at ways in which we can take it offline in the future, but at the moment, we would encourage you, if you can, to try and get online. The other thing that the page talks about is accessing support. And what we recognised is, whilst these courses are available for anybody to get on there and have a go on their own, in their own time, might be sat at home at a laptop, it might be on an iPad, it might be on your mobile phone while you're going for that walk. John, a good banana behaviour. It can be any of those things. But for some people, they might want to have someone just to talk through these things with. So what we wanted to do was train up a great team of wellbeing volunteers, and John's provided lots of training for the volunteers to equip them to be able to guide, encourage and support somebody as they're actually going through the course that they choose to do. They're not counsellors. This isn't about counselling. This is taking a couple of steps back from that. This is about normalising the conversation. It's about proactively providing you with skills, with tools, with understanding, so to empower you to actually recognise when things are taking a negative turn. And what we want to do is to avoid the point where people feel the way that Mhairi did. She openly talked about going into that deep depression. If we can work on this earlier in the journey, when you're still feeling relatively well, then one of the things we hope is that when maybe in 6 months' time or 6 weeks' time, if you find that you're having not just a bad day, but actually a bad few days, that actually things are starting to really get on top of you, that you can go back and revisit the things that you've done within this course, look back at the tools that John spoke about and say, well, what's the difference? What's missing now that I was doing then? And maybe be able to recognise that and reintroduce some of those really good behaviours. So let's have a look at what the portal looks like for those of you, for me to be able to just talk that through. So first of all, we've made the system as simple as possible. We have not only involved the community in the focus groups, but also in accessibility testing to make sure that the service is actually going to work for everyone. So it takes you through to, when you click on the link, it'll take you through to this welcome page, and there's an option to register. It's a very straightforward registration process in that we ask for no more than your name, first name, last name, email. We do ask you to tick a box just to confirm that you're happy for us to collect your data, and then just to choose a password of your choice. Once you've actually registered, then in future you can save the password. There's a system, if the system allows you to save that password, it makes logging in the future nice and easy, which I thought I'd asked it to remember, but never mind. It's not easy to type when you're holding a bit of paper. It is, I know, but I hope it's building good suspense. Okay, and when we log in, it's going to take us back to the welcome page. And John has very kindly done another video on there just to explain more about the course. If you scroll down, you then get the option of the 3 courses that are available to you, and you can choose which one you think is most suitable for you. Underneath that, there's a button where you can go and have a look at our frequently asked questions. There's lots of information in there to let you know about everything from downloading the activities, sort of questions maybe around the course and how we decided to sort of start this piece of work and things like that. There's the option for the assisted journey, and that's for you to choose to have a volunteer and get more support. And that's going to take you back into our page at Retina UK website that talks about our other services that we offer. If we just choose one of them, I'm going to click on the early stages, and it will take you through. Every course will start and end with a questionnaire. And the questionnaire is really just to assess how you're thinking and feeling, both at the beginning and the end. And that really just helps us to understand how these modules, how the course is actually helping and supporting you. So once you've completed the questionnaire, it will then take you through all of the steps that Mhairi and John have talked about, from diagnosis, keep calm and carry on, point of impact, coming out, and the new normal. And in each of those modules are made up and structured in exactly the same way. So for example, if we go into diagnosis, which is the first module, it will have some information about this particular area of the course. It will have a video in which you'll hear John imparting his wisdom. And not at all. And everybody who's heard it says it's really, your voice is so easy to listen to, John. It's lots of really good information in there. And what he does do is also explain the activities that are actually take part within this module. You scroll down, it then gives the activities that have been discussed and allows you to actually download those into a Word document that you can actually use, you can play with, you can add your thoughts, your feelings, and save that document so you can come back to it later on. At the bottom of the screen, there's a help that says more help in a big pink button. And at any point, even if you didn't decide to do it at the very beginning, You can choose to click that, and it just asks you to let us know if you want the help and support of one of our wellbeing volunteers. You can choose to do that at any point through the process. And that's pretty much how we're working with the courses. We really want to make sure that they encourage, empower you, support you, guide you, and really help you to get to grips with your well-being in a positive way. You know, for it to really make a difference when those dark days come around, that actually there's some really good behaviours that you can go back to, that you can grab hold of and practice and hopefully make a difference. There may be some of you sitting in the audience today that thinks, oh, do you know, this is not for me. You know, I don't do that floppy stuff. That's not for me. I'd ask you to be open-minded. There may be some in the audience that have come across wellbeing numerous times, and I've found some really good techniques that help you. It's worth giving this a go and having a look. Please engage with it. And even if you have a look at it and you think, you know, it's not for me right at the moment, there may be somebody that you know, somebody that you're talking to in conversation, that it actually it'll be really helpful for that individual. Please pass on the information and let them know. I'd like to invite John and Mhairi back up to the stage, and if you've got any questions at all, please do just raise a hand. Is there any questions at all?
Yeah, we've got some questions from those online. I think the first one is, I think my partner might be struggling with their well-being, but I don't know how to talk to them about it or start the conversation. Do you have any advice?
Mhairi, do you want to take that one?
I think it's great that you're noticing that this is happening, and certainly I would try and open up the conversation saying, hey, I've noticed that recently you've been, you know, whatever. I'm wondering how you're feeling about things. Do you want to, would it be helpful to talk to me about it, or do you want to talk to somebody else about it? Looks like you might be carrying things or something like that. But definitely try and, you know, I don't know, try and open up some space or invite them to talk to somebody that they feel, because sometimes they don't want to burden friends and family with how they're feeling. That's, you know, I've counseled many blind and partially sighted people, and that's the sense. They don't want to give it to you. They, you know, they love you or care for you. So even to invite them to speak to somebody else. I'm definitely for having a look at this course. This is a kind of really nice way of saying, hey, I heard about this Retina course, you know, why don't you have a look at it? So yeah, that would be my kind of suggestions, but you know, yes, hope that's helpful.
John, is there anything to add?
Yeah, I'd add it from somebody who's very familiar with trying to hide the way I'm feeling from people. Sometimes you don't actually, you might not be able to talk to them at all if they're not ready to. Unfortunately, you can't force people to tell you what's going on unless you've got a really effective light that you can shine in their face in an interrogation room. But one of the things that I would say, rather than having that conversation if they're not ready, is just go through even the first module of the course, which will talk you through all of the areas of well-being, and just try and identify which one for them has stopped, and then just steadily try and encourage them to get to do that singular one. For example, I think there was a story of a group of men who all had depression, and they'd gone through therapy and different things, and they kind of, it was a recurring issue. They never seemed to get over that cloud of depression around them, and they all started as part of their therapy working on an allotment, and that lifted their depression. It wasn't necessarily the talking therapies or anything like that. So try and identify something that they might have done previously and encourage them to specifically do that, or maybe suggest doing it together until it's that particular positive behavior is rebuilt in their life.
Thank you. I've got another one if there are none from the floor. that's also come in. I'm a parent of a child with sight loss. Is this resource suitable for them? We don't have an age, but perhaps you could just give an indication of ages that it might be suitable for.
Yeah, yeah, we haven't done any testing yet in terms of like what is the lowest age that would be appropriate, because it's so variable with different children at different stages. But I would say starting at 15, 16, give it a go, but then we would look to test it from sort of 12 onwards. So if they're secondary school, then I would say give it a go. But it might be that if they're between 12 and 15 or 16, then doing it with them might be a bit better, so that if there's, if we say dopamine in one of the videos, for example, there's a backup explanation of it from the parent. So yeah, do it together. That'd be great.
Thank you.
I'd definitely say, for the parents as well, sort of the supporting others course would be a really good place to look as well, because it's going to provide them with the tools and techniques to sort of start those, those conversations and maybe introduce, even if the child isn't ready to sort of go through the course. If they're at a younger age, it might just give mum and dad someone looking after themselves, because you're always worried if it's your child, aren't you? You want to take it away, and you'd rather it was me and not them. But it will open up ways to actually have those conversations. Mhairi, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that too, that the supporting others one might be helpful for the parents. Yeah, it is really tough, and especially when it's your beloved child. And, I know as a parent myself, like, when the girls were tested, my 3 daughters were all tested for it, there was that sense of carrying yourself, the own kind of like worry and fear for them. So I think perhaps the supporting others part on the website might be helpful. But yes, thinking of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions at all? A couple in the room.
Sorry.
Just bringing the mics to you, sorry.
Hello, I wanted to say thank you to both John and Mhairi for sharing their stories. I identified with everything that Mhairi said. My journey sounds identical, apart from the fact that when I had my diagnosis, I found it reassuring because I had been quite bewildered by things that didn't make sense. So the diagnosis made a lot of sense. I also didn't have much time to get to terms with it because I had young children, one of whom went to school the following day and said, "Guess what? Mummy's lost her driving license." So that was, I wanted to ask about your volunteers and whether they need to be counsellors or whether some or all of them have sight loss. Could you tell us a bit more about how they were recruited, please?
I can. From within our own teams, we've gone out and looked at individuals that have got the skills that we think are right, and that's not, in fairness, they're not counsellors. It's not having a counselling background, but all of the team are living with our conditions themselves. So a genuine understanding, about the days, the ups and downs. Many of them have experienced the difficulties and the darker days, going through their own journey, and have found ways coming out the other side. So it's very much lived experience rather than the counselling. As I said, this is not to replace counselling. There's the whole idea with this is really to sort of help people with early intervention. It's about trying to understand and recognise as your well-being is taking a slide, as taking a dip, so we can start to put the actions back in place to stop us spiralling into that state of higher anxiety and deep depression. Of course, some people will still experience those things. It's not wrong. It's just we're trying to avoid the pitfalls for some people. But what we hope is if less people are actually getting to that point, then the wait times for services, which we know are really long, hopefully they'll be reduced and people can get the help that they want quicker. So we are focusing very much on early stages and with an amazing team that are all living with our conditions themselves. Anything else? Was there another question in the room?
Hi. Firstly, I just want to say thank you. I'm in the wellbeing sector as well, and I'm blind, and it's so refreshing to see that this is coming more mainstream. And in the sector, I only wish we had something like this 25 years ago when I was younger. So yeah, thank you for that. Secondly, it's a question to Mhairi, really. Did you find that your partner struggled a lot with your sight deteriorating and getting worse? And if they did, how did you manage that? I only say it because I seem to be doing a lot better than my husband. I've come to terms with it a lot better. I'm dealing with it a lot better. And I mean, it could be that I'm a lot more used to this kind of approach. But I do notice that he is struggling a lot with me now losing my sight and being a blind person. So how did you find that, and how would you suggest I work with him?
Wow, yeah, that resonates with me. So initially, my husband was almost like overprotective of me. He was like, I wasn't to do anything, and I was kind of wrapped in cotton wool. And then he got to the stage where he was kind of underprotective and like, oh, you can do that. And that we didn't quite ever strike the right balance, I think. But I think it is really hard for partners, and it's hard for you as their partner as well. I think perhaps this resource might be a good place of a kind of looking, inviting them to have a look at it online and to see if it's got any help for them. But it is really hard to strike the balance. Sometimes relationships don't make it, and through the challenges of sight loss, and that adds more pressure into relationships. So yeah, it's good that you're recognizing it, and yeah, I wish you so much all the best. And it sounds like you've got a wonderful attitude, and your strength and resilience might be kind of like help to your partner. But yeah, have a look at I think this might be an interesting resource to point them to. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I definitely echo that. I think in terms of the, sort of the supporting others course, but, there are other services that we offer. And the one thing I would say is, our wonderful helplines, both email and telephone, are there. And again, they're manned by people that are living with our conditions, and they're open to families. Somebody just wants to talk things through. And often we find that family members, they don't talk to their partner because they're worried about upsetting them. Whereas our helplines, if you're talking to a stranger, it's sort of a safe place, isn't it? You can talk about what it is on your mind without worrying about upsetting the person that you love. So, that is a resource that's open to him as well. Thank you. Any other questions at all? Yes, sorry, can we have a mic just down at the front here? Sorry.
Could you raise your hand again? Who?
Hello, Dr. Mhairi. I paid attention when you said that you had a couple of dark years adapting, and you also said that you came from an arts background. That's very interesting. I want to ask you, for me at least, my dark years were when I had to think about resetting my skill sets or resetting myself, as I think that what we do almost all of the time defines us, our identity, I think. And those dark years for me were thinking, maybe if I can't see what I'm doing anymore, I'm not myself anymore. I don't know if that makes sense to you. And after those years, I came to the conclusion that I had to adapt to keep on going and doing what I do, regardless of my sight. And things started changing for good. And now I'm very, very confident about myself again. So my question is, do you think it's important to keep our identity on focus as we struggle through the darkness of adapting to our sight loss? Or is it good to see if there are options to see if we are good at something else also, and not hold too much to the visual side of our skills?
Wow, what a question. That is marvelous. And it speaks to one of the key things for people who are, going through sight loss journey, is that changing identity. And for like, as yourself, you said, if you're working with the visual arts and you're losing your sight, that's a real kind of place of fear and darkness, because it's like, who am I now that I can't see? Who am I? So for me, it was losing my job as a teacher. I was like, who am I now? I'm not Miss whoever anymore. I'm just, I'm retired or washed up. But I think in hindsight, what I have learned over the course of the past kind of 20 odd years is, like, I would never have imagined that life would be like it is now. I would never have seen the possibilities that I would be here talking to you guys, being Dr. Thurston and, like being an expert in something, because I was just a primary teacher. I wasn't interested in kind of academia. So I went accidental academic. And I think there's something about us. I've reconnected with my creativity in a different way, and I think I've reconnected also with my love of the visual arts, but it's been a really long, and it's not quite finished yet, journey of readjustment. So I think what you've said is, like, yes, there's something about your identity that you do kind of grieve over as it changes, but then having a kind of openness to what you don't know yet will unfold. It's like, often we jump ship from things that we love pretty early on, because we think, how can we do that? How are we going to be able to do that? But as we kind of get to kind of new normal, there's a kind of reconnecting with our own internal resources, and sometimes they come back. Not that you'll ever see in the same way, but something else kind of emerges. So yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense at all. It's a very rambly answer, but I do absolutely know what you're speaking of, and I think just be open to the possibilities of anything. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Mhairi. I think that's all we've got time for, but I hope you've enjoyed listening, and that actually you'll go back and log into Discover Wellbeing and see what you think of the courses, and please, use them. Call us if you've got any questions, and spread the word. Thanks very much.